All right. Well, sorry for the delay, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Eric Schwenter, joined today by Mike Hall, my colleague. We are both senior solution architects on the AWS Public Sector State and Local Government team. I'm here today to talk to you about enterprise collaboration tools, part of our AWS Work Suite of applications. Just at a high level, I'm going to take a few minutes here at the opening to give an overview of some of those applications. Then I'm going to turn the stage over to Mike to do a demo of all of those. So he's got the good part, so don't leave too early. And then we'll save a few minutes at the end for questions. Without further ado, let's get started. So the AWS Work Suite of applications is a number of managed enterprise applications that we've developed to help customers quickly get spun up and to solve some of their problems traditionally with managing day-to-day software at the enterprise level. Today we're going to cover three of these applications, Amazon Chime, WorkMail, and WorkDocs. Also included in the suite are Amazon QuickSight for analytics and visualization, as well as Amazon Workspaces and AppStream for managed virtualized desktops and streaming desktop application delivery. If those topics are of interest to you, I highly encourage you to come back to this room right after lunch, where our colleague Andrew Defoe will be presenting with one of our customers about Workspaces and AppStream. So at a high level, we develop these enterprise applications to help customers address some of their pain points around things like email and document sharing. And we've done this around some of our traditional principles within AWS. These enterprise applications are fully managed and built upon the strengths of the AWS ecosystem for high levels of security, flexibility, and follow our traditional on-demand, pay-as-you-go, highly flexible cost structure. By utilizing our global infrastructure, you can take advantage of a very high reliability, very high performance set of applications, and you can use those with existing management tools as well as your client applications that you're already familiar with to maximize your existing software investments. The first service we're going to talk about today is Amazon WorkMail. I think probably you guys are familiar with email. You may have sent or received one before. You're probably doing that right now on your phone or laptop. So I'm sure you're familiar, but WorkMail is a fully managed enterprise email, calendaring, and contact management service. Really what we strive to do here is to provide a fully managed infrastructure to simplify the procurement and deployment process for email. It provides calendaring, global contact management, as well as that managed email service. And that allows our customers to kind of change from the traditional model of advanced planning, procurement, deployment, and ongoing lifecycle management to change from that upfront capital expense model of procuring hardware and storage resources and managing that in an ongoing manner, and replacing that with simple capital expense pay-as-you-go pricing model. We allow you to use WorkMail with any tools that support IMAP, so your existing Microsoft Outlook clients, as well as open source tools like Mozilla Thunderbird, for instance, or through our WorkMail web application. As I mentioned, it's a fully managed service, so you don't have to manage that ongoing lifecycle. Email is a very vital service for most organizations. We don't want to have downtime while we're managing server lifecycle upgrades, and by taking advantage of that managed service, you can free yourself from that process and focus on your day-to-day work. Also, we'll transition into security, but WorkMail is built upon the concept of our region-based architecture. So when you choose a region, your data stays in that region, and you can take advantage of all of AWS's extensive security and encryption tools. That encryption is built upon the top of our key management service, And so WorkMail allows customers to manage their own encryption keys. Each user email box is encrypted with a separate master key for a very high level of isolation and security at rest. As I mentioned, you can choose the region in which you deploy your WorkMail resources. Your data will stay in that region at all times. It won't be synchronized to any other region, even here in the United States, to help you meet your data sovereignty requirements. Further, all of your mobile customers, or mobile employees, for instance, that may have devices such as iOS or Android tablets, anything that supports the Exchange Active Sync protocol, you're going to get a very high level of security, both in transit and on that device. And on the server side, we also automatically include a number of protections from malware, spam, and viruses. So that can also help you from a cost perspective, freeing you from having to implement third-party server-side security and scanning tools. And to provide a customer assurance, we've done that in a way that's compliant with a number of ISO certifications. On the pricing side, it's about as simple as you can get. $4 per user per month for a 50 gig mailbox. I really hope most of you don't have more than 50 gigs of email, because that's too much for me personally. We do offer a bundle with our WorkDocs service, which we'll talk about here in a minute. For only $2 more, you can have that in a bundle. If you're interested in trying that, we do offer a free 30-day trial for WorkMail that covers 25 users. And also, we have a number of tools to allow you to synchronize and migrate from your existing Exchange infrastructure. And we have a number of AWS partners, companies such as Transcend and Audriga, that offer a managed migration service, which for a limited time, we are actually subsidizing that cost fully. So no cost to you to utilize those services. So if you're interested, please check out our website, our WorkMail website, to get in touch with those partners. So at a high level, these are going to be consistent themes. Access your WorkMail from any device, anywhere, generally using your software that you're already familiar with, taking advantage of things like Active Directory integration for single sign-on, easy management of your user base, all at that low-cost pay-as-you-go model. And our key differentiators here are around data sovereignty. Pick your region, your data stays there. If you choose to put it here in our Northern Virginia region, that data will stay there at all times, fully encrypted, utilizing encryption keys that you control at all times. That's something that's generally not common in the market, and we really feel that's a strong differentiator for the WorkMail service. And so now moving on to WorkDocs, which again is a secure managed service that allows our customers to share and collaborate, as well as store their documents across their organization. Again, that common theme, easy access, anywhere, any device. WorkMail provides the capabilities to do commonly used features, things like document sharing, managed policies for how you share those documents, and give other users read-only access or co-ownership, for instance. I can utilize all of those AWS cloud resources, take advantage of at-rest encryption, again, in the region of your choice. You choose where WorkDocs is going to operate for your organization, and your data will stay there at all times. WorkDocs also supports Active Directory integration, as well as building on the capabilities of Active Directory's multi-factor authentication for a really high level of authorization security up front. WorkDocs, we have a number of client tools for those. For desktop users, we have a Windows and a Mac desktop client. For users who are mobile, we support direct access through a WorkDocs website. And also for people with standardized devices, we have iOS-based as well as Android phone and tablet support, and we support Amazon Fire as well. Again, on the encryption front, we build in security from the ground level. Your data is always encrypted in transit and at rest. We're using AES 256 encryption at rest for a very high level of data security, backed by our S3 storage service. You're doing that in the region of your choice. Again, that's a common theme across these services, providing you those data sovereignty assurances to help you meet your requirements. We also allow you to implement very fine-grained policies for access to that data. I can give my manager co-ownership rights to my documents. I may choose to give read-only permissions to other users. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the collaboration process of sharing versions of documents through email, and that may kind of work in a one-on-one basis, but as soon as you get into a group dynamic, that falls apart very quickly. And so WorkDocs supports versioning and comments in a way that really help the group collaborate while keeping all of that data fully encrypted within the AWS cloud. And again, full sign-on, federated to your existing corporate directory, including multi-factor authentication. WorkDocs, like WorkMail, simple pricing. $5 per user for 200 gigs of storage. You need more than that, you don't have to buy it ahead of time or commit to any specific level. We'll just charge you at the standard S3 rates, 2.3 cents a gig per month here in the United States. We do also offer a free trial for WorkDocs. This one covers 50 users for that first month to help you kind of test it out and get everything configured ahead of time before you have to start paying. So now let's talk about Chime. Chime is one of our newest services built for chat and video collaboration. It supports online meetings. Many of you are familiar with some of the existing services in the market for things like voice conferencing and video chat. But we built Chime to address some of the pitfalls that our customers have brought to us that make those services very difficult. So we support easy video conferencing, conference calls, remote desktop sharing, application sharing, as well as remote control for things like troubleshooting remotely. Always follows our pay-as-you-go pricing model. You can utilize any number of devices. Again, that consistent model, right? Windows, Macintosh desktop client, web-based client, if you're using a computer that's not generally part of the organization. We support all of the common mobile platforms, iOS and Android, phone and tablet, as well as your existing conference room resources, things like IP telephony and in-room video conferencing systems. Chime makes it really easy. So I'm sure you're all familiar with a classic thing. Your calendar comes up, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and it says, hey, you've got a meeting. I've got to dial this phone number, I've got to find the meeting pin, and you end up 5 minutes late to your meeting. Chime fixes that problem. All you've got to do when you're inviting your meeting attendees is add the meet@chime.aws email address along with your other attendees. At the time that the meeting is scheduled to start, they'll automatically get a pop-up, a call if you will, that they can click to join that meeting with just a single mouse click. So unfortunately, you no longer have any excuses to be late for those meetings. Once you're in that meeting, you've got a number of features available to you that also seek to address some of the common problems that we hear from customers. I'm sure we're also all familiar with people joining those meetings late, and the meeting host has to stop and say, hey, who just joined? Who's in my room now? And so we've addressed that by adding a visual roster of all of our attendees, along with things like indicators of volume, whether they're muted. We also are familiar with things with remote workers, for instance. We've got people in the field. They might be sitting out here in the conference hall atrium, or they might be at home and they've got barking dogs, screaming children, and it's really distracting everyone. You can actually remote mute those participants so that they reduce your distraction and allow you to participate in that meeting effectively. For confidential meetings, we allow things like room locks to prevent other people from joining that meeting while it's in progress, as well as giving you the capabilities to record those meetings for future use. As I mentioned before, we can do things like share individual application windows or my entire desktop. I can hand remote control over to other meeting attendees for things like remote troubleshooting. And then I can also take advantage of some of the features of those multiple device capabilities. So maybe my meeting's running long, I'm sitting at my desk, I really want to go get a coffee or go to lunch. We make it really easy to just join that meeting from your mobile device and disconnect from the desktop and continue that even though you're switching your devices and you're on the go. Additional features of those meetings include video conferencing. You can add video chat to an existing meeting with just a single click. On the desktop, we support 16 simultaneous video streams for large video conferencing groups. On our mobile devices, we support up to 8. If you want to do something like desktop sharing while you're doing a video chat, you can push that off into the sidebar so that you can focus on your remote content. We also have picture-in-picture so that I can have a preview of what I look like if I happen to be in that video conference at 7:30 in the morning. Make sure I've brushed my teeth and combed my hair. And then we also provide compatibility with a number of traditional in-room conferencing systems, things like Cisco's or Polycom devices that you may already have. I know we're also all very familiar with some of the audio issues that exist in some existing conferencing systems. Dropped calls that you have to then go back into your email and find that phone number and PIN. So we've addressed that by having automatic reconnect in the case that you have a dropped call. These are designed for very high fidelity audio, even over very poor networks, things like Wi-Fi, maybe here in a conference room, for instance. For users internationally, we do have local phone numbers in over 80 countries, and we also support toll-free dialing as well. Finally, chat. This is kind of a traditional enterprise organization capability, but we've really tried to integrate this really well with some of these other features and to add additional capabilities that make your meetings go much more smoothly. So I can start off with just a one-to-one chat. I may pull up my corporate directory and to be able to search users from my single sign-on environment like Active Directory. I can then add others in to create a group chat. I can create a team-based room where I have a persistent list of attendees that has a persistent text storage. So I may sign off at the end of the day and come in the next day, sign into Chime, and all of my chats are going to be saved there for me to refer to in the future. Those are all stored on the AWS cloud, fully encrypted for total data security. Those are persistent across multiple devices. So if I'm chatting on my desktop, I switch to my phone on the go, I can go back to that room and I still see the entire history of the chat, even though I did all of that communication on a completely different client environment. We do show a number of things like presence indicators, so I can see if my colleagues are busy or maybe they're on their mobile device. You'll actually get a little mobile icon next to their name, so I can know that they're on the go. We support active mentions in group rooms, so if I need to ping a particular person in a group, I can tag them and they'll actually get a notification that they were mentioned in a room, maybe if I have a specific question for them. And I know we all love emojis. That can help in a chat room to really help people understand the true meaning of my conversation. I know I've had a few of those cases in the past where my words didn't come across exactly as I meant them. So hopefully those emojis can help us do that. We can also do things like sharing files and attachments right there in that room. So there's a lot of powerful features that allow full collaboration, sending documents through WorkDocs, collaborating in real-time chat, whether that's text or video, and we can always fall back to the good old reliable email. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Mike, and he'll demo all of that. Thanks.
All right. So what we're going to do here is kind of walk through a demo that's based on a scenario where it's a new employee coming on board to a department. There's going to be 3 people kind of involved in this. There'll be myself, who's the new employee, Eric, who's my manager, and then Brian, who's the IT manager So we'll start off by going through the use of the tools, and then afterwards kind of transition into how all the tools were provisioned and configured within AWS. So let's see. Is it switched over? Laptop went to sleep. Do you have a signal now? Okay. So we're going to start off with a situation where the IT manager is sending a welcome email after configuring the new user. Traditionally, this IT manager is adverse to Windows, so they're using Ubuntu. So what we're going to actually do is show some of the tools working in our web clients. So to start with, Brian comes in and has already gone out and provisioned myself as a new user. So now he'll actually go into a web client. This is using our WorkMail, log in using his Active Directory account, even though he's not in the Active Directory per se from his workstation, and have the ability to fire off and create a new email. The email is going out and doing lookups against Active Directory so that it can populate the username, it can populate the email address, and you're not having to manually type that in. Type in the message that they would like. We do support spell check in there. Go ahead and send that message off so that it's waiting for me when I come into the office on my first day. What you will see is a lot of the tools that we're going to show today are integrated with Active Directory. We'll actually show that integration and how that's set up in the second half of this. But Brian now sends that email. He can see it in his sent message, and it's off and into my inbox now. So moving forward, I arrive at my desk for the first day. I have a workspace that's been configured for me. So it's a desktop as a service. I actually log in. Outlook's ready to go for me. It's automatically configured using the auto-connect settings that were provisioned by WorkMail. I can see the message from Brian, have the ability to send messages. And again, because I'm within Active Directory, I did not have to log in. I can just automatically have my credentials passed on to that service. I send an email over to Eric, my manager, saying that, hey, I made it in for the first day, ready to get going. What do we need to do from here? Of course, Eric's running a little bit late. He's out in the field, and so he's not at his desk yet, but he does have the ability to pull up his mobile device. And what you'll see is actually, in this case, an iOS device integrated with WorkMail, again, using Active Directory authentication. Eric's able to see my email, respond to it right from the device, as you would expect, supporting the Active Sync protocol that Eric mentioned earlier. He's able to see my email, send that response back, and have that email come in to my inbox. He's going to let me know that he's going to swing by my desk in a little bit. He'd love to catch up on the project that I'm going to be working on going forward. So what you see is now back on my side, going into my desktop, seeing that email message come in from Eric, and able to I guess I have to send and receive there, able to see that message and then respond to it accordingly. So at this point, Eric gets into his desk and decides, you know what, instead of just sending email back and forth between the two of us, and let me back up. The green desktop represents Eric's desktop, and the orange is my desktop, so two desktops going on there. Eric decides that it's probably best to actually send me a chat message instead of email, because it seems like the email's a little bit slower and less personal than maybe a chat. So he uses Chime to send me a message and say, you know what, sorry I spaced on coming by your desk, but I'm here now, so why don't I swing by and we can talk about that project. I see the pop-up come up on my screen. The message is right there. I'm able to respond to Eric and say, that'd be great, looking forward to it. You do see that kind of those bars on the top there. Eric talked about that persistent chat. Those are just periods that I use to clear the screen out. But you do see that I'm able to actually go in and see that chat from what happened earlier. At this point, Eric wants to show me the document that we are going to be working on as part of this project. He realizes that the document is pretty big in size, and trying to send it via email wouldn't be the most effective way to do that. So he launches into WorkDocs, and from there he actually sees the files that are synced on his machine. He's able to drill in and find the file that he's interested in sharing with me. At this point, he can choose to have me be a read-only. He can choose for us to collaborate on this document. And what he's actually done is given me the permissions to be a contributor to this document. The lookup that Eric's done is, again, done against Active Directory, so all the permissions are inherited automatically there. When he chooses to send that collaboration request to me, I'll actually get an email notification in my inbox saying that a document's been shared with me. So at this point, I can go in, I can see the document, and what's really cool is that by actually going in and using accessing that document via Workspaces is I actually get a preview without having to launch the clients. So if somebody sends me a document type like a PowerPoint or maybe Word that I don't natively have a client for, I can still view it and access that document. I log in with my Active Directory credentials. And at this point, you'll see that the Word document comes up. You can see the people on the right that are chosen to contribute or view or have permissions in some way to access this document. And so what I decide is that, it's great that I can see this document, but I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing with it. And so I send Eric a message saying, I saw it, it's great, but what do you really want me to do with this information? What do you want me to do with this document? So send the message to Eric, and Eric is going to end up deciding that it's probably best if we go through a screen sharing session to actually look at the content together, and he can give me input and feedback about what he would like me to do with that document. So from this point, he actually clicks on the phone icon and launches an instant meeting with the people that are participating in that room. So at this point, we connect, and if we were actually at our workstations, we could have audio going either through our phones or through the speakers and microphones on our computers. But Eric does a screen share, and so what you see on the right now is actually my workstation viewing Eric's workstation. Eric launches the Word document that we've been collaborating on. You'll see the session going between the two screens there. And he says, you know what, I'm asking him why it's an important document, and basically he says, because I said so. So at that point, I said, great, but let me comment a little bit on this. So what I can actually now do is request remote control of Eric's desktop. So instead of us opening the same file and saying, now look at my screen, look at your screen, I can actually request remote control, and I can make edits right in the document. Now the document is actually living on Eric's workstation. So when he saves that, it'll be on his workstation, but we've been able to collaborate on it right from the thick client of Word. So at this point, Eric stops the screen sharing. I no longer see his workstation. He ends that call. We can comment on the quality of that call if we choose to. So now in that WorkDocs, there's also a client that we have running on our machines that whenever I save a document, it's uploaded automatically to WorkDocs as natively integrated into the Explorer functions of Windows. So I can actually see that, and I have a local copy of that document because Eric's chosen to share that with me. So this kind of runs through what we've done so far as the use of the applications. So now what we're going to do is pivot over to setting those up. So as an IT administrator, what does it take to set up workspaces? What does it take to set up WorkMail, WorkDocs, and Chime as well? So everything that we're going to go through here forward is net new. The only thing that has already been done is Active Directory integration. So we've tied that into our on-prem environment. So myself and Brian and Eric have been defined in Active Directory, but everything else going forward will be built as we go. So to start with, I'm going to actually create a workspace. And workspaces, again, are those directory as a services, or desktop as a services, excuse me. I start off by choosing the directory that I want these to be integrated with. I can see all of my users that are in Active Directory. I can pick the users that I want to create that desktop for. And at that point, I can choose what type of a workstation I want to give them. Do I want to give them Windows 7? Do I want to give them Windows 10? Are they standard? Are they power users? Should they have the Office suite? Should they not? I can choose those profiles for those desktops. And then when I choose next step and actually launch those, I can choose if I want them always on or on demand, meaning if I'm not using them, they shut down, save money there. I can choose to encrypt the root volumes of those drives. I can choose to use tags for cost allocation purposes. But what's really cool is once these workstations are launched, because of that Active Directory tie-in, these machines are automatically part of the domain. So the user has their credentials, and they launch that client to it. They're logging in with their AD credentials, the machine's joined, the applications are built already in that workspace and are ready to go. So here we see the individual workspaces for those users, and you'll see that they're provisioned. I can actually go and expand those workstations, see information about when it was provisioned, what type of package was installed, and the encryption that's involved with those. So now that we have our workspaces spun up, we're actually going to create our WorkMail. So similar to how we started with our workspaces, what we do is start with creating our WorkMail is by choosing the directory or the domain that we're going to be integrating with. So I choose the standard setup. Again, I see my available directories there. At this point, I can also create an alias that's used for those users that will be used for the web-based access of those tools. And I can also choose my encryption keys. So the encryption keys can either be created by me or predefined by AWS. So the WorkMail has now been provisioned for my domain. At this point, I can use that default domain that I created earlier that was summitdemo2017.awsapps.com for my email domain. And what you'll see here is actually if I, out of the gate, try to provision my users, I see that as my available option for those domain users. Now, we actually want to use our own summitdemo2017.com email address or alias, or I'm sorry, domain for the email addresses. So what we do is actually go over and claim that domain. And AWS doesn't want you just randomly picking email domains out of thin air, so we have to actually ask you to prove that you own that domain name. So what I do is I enter my domain name, and then I'll actually go and take a set of records that AWS gives me and insert those into my DNS. What that's actually going to end up doing is a couple of things. One is going to create a text record that has a hash string in it that proves that if you look that up, that's me. So AWS is going to use that and do a lookup against my domain to prove that I actually have administrative control over that domain name. It's also going to have me do things like create the MX records so that my email is properly routed to AWS, and also configure other records that are used for that auto discovery piece that's used by Outlook. Now, I've sped up the process here because I'm sure you guys don't want to sit here and watch me enter a bunch of records into DNS. But again, as I stated, we're creating the auto discovery, the MX records, the domain verification, and although this is done in Route 53, this could also be done in your existing on-premise DNS servers that are internet-facing. So once these domains are created, what will actually happen is within WorkMails, we're going to do a lookup against some of those verification records to make sure that you do actually have the privileges or the ownership of those domains. And then at that point, that domain alias is going to be available for your users to use for their email accounts. Okay, so now if we come back in here, we'll see that my domain actually shows up as verified. So I have the summitdemo2017.net as an available domain to me. It's been verified by AWS. And now what I'm going to do is actually choose that as my default domain for email addresses. So when I enable users going forward, any users by default is going to be username at summitdemo27.net. So I'm going back in, I'm setting up Brian, Eric, and myself. We enable the users. You see that those pull-down menus now have summitdemo2017.net as the default. I can set the email address that I would like for those folks. You'll see that the email addresses are now listed there, and if I click on any one of those individual users, I can see information about that person. What you'll also see is that we do support mobile features, so if I have a device that I'm accessing from that's mobile, it's going to be listed there, and I can also have device policies against those mobile devices for MDM setup. Okay, WorkDocs is the feature that we saw earlier where we can collaborate, we can share, and sync documents from our workstations, from our mobile devices, and also from web clients. So again, start off by selecting the directory that we're going to choose to integrate with. We're going to enable that directory for WorkDocs. What you'll see next is that we'll pick an administrator. So in this case, Eric, he's the boss. So Eric's going to be the administrator for our WorkDocs site. I enter his username and select him as an administrator. I see that the URL will come up that was defined earlier. So again, summitdemo2017.awsapps.com/workdocs, and we're good to go. At this point, Eric can log in. He's been provisioned. He's logging in with his Active Directory credentials, again, because we picked that as our domain that we are going to use when we started the provision of WorkDocs. He logs in. He's going to get a prompt that kind of walks him through the first-time feature notification that's available within WorkDocs. He clicks next. And then at that point, he's able to actually go in and see his docs. He can download the client and have that available on his machine and be ready to start collaborating. We're going to talk a little bit about Chime now. So Chime is the chat and screen sharing and collaboration tool that we showed earlier. So in configuring Chime, what we'll actually do is go in and we'll create a new account and pick a name for that account. This is a locally significant name, so it only really matters to us as far as how we view this account. When we go into the account, what we're actually going to do is similarly to how we claimed our domain name. In email, we're going to also do that for Chime. So I type in my summitdemo2017.net domain. I'm going to get a text record that I'm asked to enter into my DNS servers. So what you'll see is I actually copy that hash value. I'll go back to Route 53 and create an additional DNS entry. Once this is created, Chime will actually query that DNS record within my Route 53 account, verify that hash value matches. Once it sees that it matches, it knows that I am obviously an administrator for that domain and allow me to provision users within that domain going forward. So you'll see that the status is now changed to verified and is now available for me to use. So now that Workspaces and Chime and WorkDocs and WorkMail have all been set up, what does it look like for the end user? So the first time a user logs into their workspace, they would actually be able to go in and access Outlook. Outlook is going to get their Active Directory credentials directly from the login that they had into that machine. And because of not only the AD credentials, but those records that we created for WorkMail, that auto discovery record, Outlook is going to use that to get settings that it needs to configure Outlook. So what email server do I use? What port should I use? What domain? None of that has to be inputted by the user. They just have logged in, open Outlook, and it's auto-configured for them. Once they log in, again, it'll take their credentials, open up, and you'll see that the initial email will be in the Eric's inbox. That email actually came from WorkDocs when he was defined as the administrator for that account. But now he's able to access and log into his email from the Thick client. So with that, went through a lot, kind of lightning speed there as far as the demo. Eric and I are available for questions. Any questions we can take or help out with? Yes.
Just looking at some where some of your competitors are in this, could you discuss what your roadmap is for this suite of products? What's your feature roadmap? What you're looking at in terms of additional features?
You want to?
Our primary roadmap now being primary roadmap right now being relatively new services, increasing the number of region rollouts. Our features are highly driven by customer feedback. So if there are things in here that you believe are important for your organization that are not included out of the box, we'd love to hear that stuff because that's how our service teams drive new product development. For us, our initial focus was on a broad variety of device support, as well as that easy integration with existing domains. So love to take your feedback offline if you have specifics. Right now, our immediate roadmap, given a new product rollout, is trying to make sure that we have very broad region support across our entire global infrastructure.
Yes.
You talked about, I guess, that you have support for data encryption, and you also mentioned, that you're creating, sort of the documents and files. But I guess more specifically, could you dive a little deeper on sort of how you specify storage with this configuration? Like, is it by default? Like, what? Like,
I'm sorry. As far
for the actual products that you're creating, right, within the workspaces. So, how do you, configure that? Like, are there options for that? Is that built into the actual secret sauce of the products? Like, where do you specify storage, for those things? Like, can you modify storage? Can you,
like as far as the location of the storage?
right?
No, the tools have been set up and configured in ways to use our different storage services. What you can do is choose the encryption keys that are used for those different services, in that you can create keys and bring your own keys so that you own the keys, you have the private key, and nobody else has those keys but you, so that any of the decryption that might need to be done down the road is ultimately controlled by you. If simplicity is more important, we actually have kind of master keys that can be used for that, but you always have the ability to bring your own keys.
Okay, thank you.
By default, on the storage side, you're getting that 50 gigs per mailbox. That's not something you have to allocate or manage. Each WorkMail mailbox is 50 gigs. By default, WorkDocs are getting 200 gigs. But if you need to, per user that is, if you need to expand beyond that, there's nothing that you have to do. It is on demand. So that 201st gigabyte, you're just going to get an additional charge, but our WorkDocs is backed by our S3 storage service. So you're just going to get charged that additional incremental cost when you exceed the per user storage cost. But everything is, the value prop here is a fully managed set of services that free you from having to worry about that.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yes.
So you get 200 gigs for WorkDocs. If I share a document with somebody, is it now in both of our docs? And it's being charged twice?
No. So the question was about the if WorkDocs is if the quota counts against you if somebody shares a document with you, or is it just the person that initiated that request? So the short answer is no. The person that owned it and initiated the request is the person whose quota it counts against. With that said, if you do have the client running on your workspaces or on your machine, those will be locally copied to your machine, and it could consume space on that machine. Now, you do have the ability to do selective syncs. So with that, you could see that Eric shared this huge folder with me. It's great that he did that, but I could actually go in and pick the certain folders or files that I care about so that they are synced, even though I have access to all of them down the road. I think you had a question?
Is it a Azure domain or an on-prem domain? What domain are you talking about?
So we have a couple options, but in this, it was a hosted Active Directory domain. So it was a full Active Directory implementation that we offer as a service. So it's you don't have to deal with managing the Windows servers or the patching or any of that, but it's a hosted environment that's run out of multiple availability zones. With a what? I'm not sure on that. I haven't tried. That's something I'd have to look into.
What about integration with Slack or something like that?
As far as using that directory services, you would have to expose those. You would have to expose those directory services for Slack or somebody to be able to authenticate against them if you wanted to. The setup that I had they were contained within our environment, so they weren't exposed via any SAML or anything like that. So if some external service wanted to authenticate against that, you would have to, in some way, which is possible, expose that for that service to be able to authenticate against it. Oh, okay. We were talking about the directory services, so I misunderstood the question there. I'm not sure on that. I haven't heard.
At the present time, there is not an integration between Chime and Slack. Those are distinct user sets. So you would not be sending messages from your Chime environment over to a Slack environment. I think they kind of built to serve the same purpose ultimately. So. Yeah. We got one right here too.
Oh, yes.
We'll get.
You mentioned whatever region we want, including GovCloud?
Roadmap.
Okay.
Not today.
Yeah, next question. What about branding, like corporate branding for things like WorkMail?
Oh, as far as modifying the
my
actual
logo,
UI, that's not something that is currently part. WorkMail is actually a relatively recent launch for us, so we don't have a custom UI interface. Generally, that's something that's an internal only. But that's certainly a good piece of feedback that I'll actually take back to the product team and enter a feature request for that. I think that's a good one. Oh. All right, I'm gonna get my exercise here.
You're gonna get all your steps in today. How does this tie into VDI on AWS?
VDI?
Yes, I know that AWS started servicing or offering virtual desktops running on AWS.
Yeah, that was the workspaces piece that we showed earlier.
Yes, I saw you create one, but does the space that the VDI take count against your 200 gigs, or is that separate?
No. The only thing that potentially would count there is when you integrate that workspaces with WorkDocs for those 200 gigs, is content that you generate yourself within that would contribute towards that. So in the demonstration I showed, Eric had a Word document that he had created. If that took up, I don't know, 10 megs, that would count towards the 200 gigs, but only that content that is synced and configured to use WorkDocs would count against that 200 gigs.
And when you configure those VDI environments, you configure the storage that is available to your users in those environments. So I can allocate a 250 gig D drive
Yes.
or E drive. Correct. You get a default amount of storage for the actual C drive itself, and then you can add additional storage as is. You actually get a D drive as well for user space, and then you can add additional storage as is required for individual users or groups within your organization.
How is patching handled in workspaces?
That's a good question.
So it is actually a fully managed environment, and so that's part of the reason that we have that separation between, you saw the C drive and the D drive that were included when he was speeding through his configuration. And so with respect to domain joined instances, you could actually utilize your existing patch management utilities, but you, in a disconnected, isolated environment that wasn't fully managed, like connected to your existing resources, you can actually specify the maintenance periods for that so that they can, you know when those are being applied. And you also saw that there was the concept of always on versus kind of auto shutdown. And so when they're in auto shutdown mode, they can be patched independently. Anybody else? Well, great. Thank you all for attending. There are survey forms here, so please fill us out. Let us know how we did and how we can do better for you next time. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.